Thank you for joining us today. I'm Haley Gallick. I work in communications here at Public Entity Partners. We're going to go ahead and kick off the webinar. I think everybody's had a chance to join. We're going to learn more about cyber challenges for municipalities and how to overcome them. Kurt Suhs with Cyber Special Ops will be leading the session today. There's no doubt that each of us hears weekly, if not daily, how cyber attacks and ransomware are impacting local governments, school districts, and utilities. Having a comprehensive cyber risk management program will help put your organization in the best position possible. Kurt is the CEO of Cyber Special Ops, a cyber risk company that provides its clients with concierge service or concierge cyber. It's hard to say. It's modeled after the concierge medicine concept. He has over 35 years of experience in the insurance and financial services sectors and helped launch the first cyber insurance product in 1997. We'll have time after the presentation today for questions, and you're welcome to utilize the chat box at any time. Thank you, Kurt, for being with us today. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Haley. I appreciate the opportunity. It's wonderful, and I appreciate everyone's time today. We really want to make this interactive, but certainly I wanted to bring some light to what we're hearing in the media about these cyber attacks, particularly against public entities. So I wanted to today talk about some of the challenges that municipalities are seeing and how we can address some of these. So last year, we really saw an uptick, actually the past couple of years, an uptick in ransomware. And according to a recent Suhs ransomware study, 34% of local governments were hit by ransomware in 2020. And that's really what we're seeing. Years ago, the ransomware was more along the lines of, hey, we're going to inject this malware, we're going to encrypt files, and we're going to delete the files unless you pay us, or we're going to freeze the files so you won't be able to view them. Well, the threat landscape's changing, and now it's about 2 years ago, it started changing to we're going to copy personal information in your network, copy files, or exfiltrate the files. And then we're going to come back and encrypt your network. And unless you pay the Bitcoin demand or cryptocurrency demand, we're going to release the files and then become a data breach. Now it's a trifecta. And what I mean by that is, most recently, we're seeing threat actors saying, okay, we're going to copy or exfiltrate files. We're going to then encrypt all your files, notify you that we have a copy or have exfiltrated. And if you don't pay, we're going to, you won't get your files back, but we're also going to insert malware to start a denial of service attack. So not only are the files encrypted, but we're going to do a distributed denial service attack to your whole computer network as another variant to the malware that's encrypting your network. And the information being exfiltrated and copied today isn't just that of personal information. We're seeing threat attackers trying to copy emails or things that could be embarrassing to an entity or its partners, and almost use that to extort them to pay. And what's remarkable today is the threat landscape is even changing so that when your network is attacked, we're seeing threat actors not only call the victim to demand the ransom, but also threaten that they will start calling your customers or other partners that they feel could leverage you to pay. Another variant, so we're going to go over a couple malware that we're seeing right now, most of recently, but AvosLocker. So AvosLocker is interesting, along with a couple other slides I'll show, where it's ransomware as a service. So you can actually go on as a unsophisticated technology person and actually pay someone as a service to attack a victim. And it's a ransomware as a service, and they'll actually encrypt the drives. They say it's fail-proof. They've got customer service and call centers that can provide people that are buying the ransomware as a service if they have any questions. And then, after they infect the target, they take care of the negotiation, hosting of leaks, publishing the data on the blogs, and so forth. In this case, the payments are all done through cryptocurrency called Monero. So Avos Locker, and again, who are these attackers hitting? It doesn't really matter about your geographic location. It doesn't matter about the industry you're in, and it doesn't matter about the size of your organization. So recently, Avos Locker targeted a city in Ohio, and this was, it's a small city of 6,200 residents, and it was at least the 45th municipality attacked in 2021. Again, we're seeing all kinds of variants. Here's another one, Big Lock. You can read the details, but basically stating that your files are safe, they've only been modified and encrypted, and that they'll give you a private key so long as you make payment. And typically what happens is when you do have and sustain a cyber attack with ransomware, generally what happens is you're going to come in one day, you're not going to be able to access your computer or your network. And then it may be within a day, it could be within a few hours, but it could be within a day or two, you're going to get the ransom demand, whether by email, by a link, or by phone from the threat attacker. And generally the demand will request Bitcoin or some type of cryptocurrency to get the decryption key. So we'll talk about really what the next step is. Who do you call? I know that many of you have cyber insurance, and we want our members, our Concierge Cyber members, and like Haley said, it's like concierge medicine. Another analogy I like is roadside assistance. So you all have auto insurance, but in the event you have a flat tire, you call an incident responder. And even if you have a covered vent, you still call your incident responder, who coordinates that. So anyway, so we'll talk about who do you call? How do you respond in a scenario where you get an attack like this? As I mentioned, they have affiliate programs. They commission those that are also ransomware as a service providers. And again, it's just like any other partner affiliate program. Himalaya is another one. And what's interesting on this variant is the attackers state that they're prohibiting members to attack healthcare organizations, and also prohibiting attacking any public or non-public, not-for-profit or association, or attacking private companies or individuals. Now, just because they state that doesn't mean they're going to adhere to those guidelines. However, we do see some of the threat actors advertising who they will and won't attack. This is again in Russian. If I clicked on this link, it goes to a blog that you could translate into English, but again, an affiliate program and a blog spot giving updates to those partners of how, again, how you can work with them to attack various organizations. June 9th, 2021, and Ryuk. So this again is another variant of encryption. In this case, the price for the software is $1,500. Payment could be made by Bitcoin. And again, it doesn't matter where you are geographically located. So Sophos really provided a very good overview of what are the key findings. So 34% of local government has been hit by ransomware in 2020. I only see that trend increasing, unfortunately. And why? Because initially, 2-3 years ago, the Bitcoin demands were $5,000, $10,000. The cyber attackers have gotten more sophisticated, knowing that there are many, many organizations that buy cyber insurance. And so we see the threat attackers, as they negotiate, actually ask the victim, do you buy cyber insurance? Or they've already copied your certificate of insurance or your insurance policy and use that to leverage you, stating, hey, we know you have $1 million in extortion limit, and you're not going to pay it. You're not going to be the victim. And that's what we're going to come out and demand is $1 million. we typically, again, if you have cyber insurance, or even if you don't, when we work with our members, the forensics attorney, the data breach attorney, will hire an information security firm to make sure that the security work is under attorney-client privilege. That's really, really important. Then the information security company will then subcontract the Bitcoin negotiation to a third company called Coveware out of Connecticut. Coveware will basically make an introduction to themselves to the threat attacker. And in doing so, they'll try to identify who the attacker is and that the attacker isn't on the US Treasury's Overseas Foreign Asset Control list, or the OFAC list, because the US government said that it is illegal to pay a sanctioned entity or country or individual if they're on the US Treasury's sanctions list. And so it's real important. And if you don't abide by that, you're putting your company and organization potentially in light of the US Treasury to go after you for civil money penalties. So it's real important for the security company through Coveware, identify the attacker, make sure they're not on the sanctioned entity list. And then what they'll do is they'll start negotiating. So they'll start from that starting point of the demand and try to negotiate that downward. And then they will actually make payment through an anonymized wallet. Another important factor is you want to have an anonymous wallet so that other individuals or entities can't see who is paying and how much you're paying. And I get the question all the time. If we pay, can we get hit again? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. There's no guarantee that because you pay that you'll get the decryption key. There's no guarantee that the threat attacker has copied files and will later publish them in the dark web. So anyways, and there's no guarantee that you'll have an attack a second time. So 69% of the organizations hit by ransomware stated that the cyber criminals did encrypt the files in their data. 42% paid the ransom to get the data back. So the FBI will publicly state and recommend we do not want US organizations, US municipalities to pay the ransom. However, the however part states that in the event you don't have the backups, in the event your backups are also encrypted, in the event you have no other choice, you have to do what you have to do to move your organization forward. So with that said, 42% stated that they paid the ransom, they got most of their data back, and that 42% had backups. So again, we always encourage and look organizations to not only back up your data, it's the 3-2-1 rule, right? So you want to have 3 forms of backup. You want to have a either an online version in the cloud, a physical version, and then again another version. 3 types. Have it in 2 locations. You want to have a backup offsite and make sure you back up weekly. But I really want to urge everyone, not only do you want to back up, you want to test your backup. I can't tell you how many times I've seen companies and organizations hit with a cyber attack. They go to their backup and their backups are also impacted as well and may not be restorable. So it's really important to test your backups just to make sure that you can keep going. And then the average bill for rectifying a ransom attack is $1.6 million. So it's not just only the payment of the ransom, and the cyber insurance policy will pay the ransom, the actual ransom. And however, you have to look at the downtime, the device, if you have to restore devices, if you have to rebuild your system because you don't have backups, and if you don't get all your data back, having to restore and recreate that data. So it could be very, very expensive. I've left the link in the PowerPoint down below so you could see the report as well. So the ability of organizations to stop ransomware, it was less successful, unfortunately, than other sectors. So generally 69% say of the local governments that were polled in the Suhs survey said their data was encrypted compared to 54% of other industries like healthcare, hospitality, and so forth. So not only was the average rate of encryption larger, it also, for municipalities, the payment amount for the ransom was 42% higher than other industries. So what is the average cost of an attack? We'll talk about that in just a second. But again, what's interesting is globally, 57% of organizations said they could restore by backup versus 42%. Why is that? Well, it could be because legacy systems, legacy programming. I know that, many years ago, Pascal, Fortran, BASIC, COBOL were programming languages that just aren't as readily available today. So if you're working off of older platforms, legacy systems, it's more challenging. But again, the attackers know this, and that's why you see such an uptick with attacks going against municipalities and school districts. So again, just because you pay the ransom doesn't mean you get the data back. 87% of the local government respondents whose data was encrypted got data back. And you can see that paying off the ransom doesn't always succeed in that 65% of their organizations, or on average, organizations that paid the ransom only got back 65% of their data. So that's a challenge then of having to completely restore that from scratch. So this gets back to what I was talking about earlier. What is the ransomware average demand payment? So in most industries, it's about, well, it's a little bit less than what we're seeing for municipalities. On average, it's $296,000. And I see that often, $250,000, $300,000. In one case, we had a client who was, again, through Coveware, we were able to get that ransom payment demand from $250,000 down to $49,000. So over a 3-day period to restore the data. So what are some of the things we can do and what you can do to help mitigate? There's nothing that's going to prevent, but you can help mitigate. So really, as I mentioned, backup and making sure that the backups are tested, making sure you regularly test those backups to make sure they're restorable. And actually, having an incident response plan, just as is organizations in Florida regularly test for hurricane disaster recovery and incident response. I really encourage everyone to think about, particularly in Tennessee, with tornadoes and things and testing of that nature, think of your organization from a data recovery standpoint. So maybe it's data in the cloud, data in your own facilities, restoring. So, having a tabletop exercise is something we love to do, where we get senior management together. We go through various scenarios and what are the roles and responsibilities of the C-suite? How do people work together from physical security to policy and procedures to technology? And again, it's not just a technology issue. So with that, we're going to kind of pivot to the next item that we see in the landscape, and a challenge for municipalities is ransomware, not ransomware, but business email compromise, otherwise known as wire fraud. And just like ransomware, which you hear in the news, I would say that the frequency and severity of wire fraud is equally as bad as ransomware. You may not hear about it, but it teeter-totters between both threats. So what is ransomware? FBI basically said that they're seeing a large increase in the amount of attacks happening throughout the United States. And the attacks ranging from anything from $10,000 being wired to the bad guys to over 4 million. Actually, I've seen a lot more. I've seen tens of millions of dollars wired. We saw recently a construction company that wired $40 million in several wires to who they thought were business partners, and in the end, it was the bad guys. So who are these actors and what do they do? So there's a lot of different variants. So for example, the threat actor may go and reconnaissance your organization. So for example, using cyberspecialops.com as an example, they may go in and create a domain called cyberspecialops.com in internet, but instead of the O in ops, use a 0, or instead of the L in special, use the letter 1. And so if it's cyber special ops, but the O is a 0 or the L is a 1, it looks very much visually like it's cyberspecialops.com. Then the threat attacker could go on and try to get our company emails and then start setting up similar emails. And again, but they're using the domain that's slightly tweaked. Then they're going to then target the CFO or maybe the person in finance to try to appear as if it's coming from the CEO or another senior person, an email that goes to the CFO saying, we want you to wire money to this entity, and here's the payment information. So again, a lot of times these variations will go right through your email filtering. Anyways, and then lo and behold, the CFO wires the money. Within a day or so, the CEO learns of the wire, goes to the CFO. What is this? The CFO will say, you asked us to wire. The CEO says no, and trying to get that money back is going to be a challenge for you. Another thing that threat actors are doing is phishing. So again, they're going to just outright send emails to your employees with the hopes of someone opening up a link or an attachment. And another bad case scenario is if the threat attackers actually can get into your network and then actually be an imposter of an actual employee to utilize their actual email credentials than to send something within the organization. And then credential harvesting. That's where the threat attackers may go in the dark web or scrape the internet for passwords, usernames, things of that nature, again, for the impact of trying to get into your organization or a supply chain vendor, basically to manipulate payment or direct deposit information. So here's a few examples. So the first one, it's a county government, and the official received an email who they thought was a vendor. And the vendor basically stated that, here is our payment information. We're going to change our instructions to a new bank. And in this case, the county administrator made the payment. Well, in this case, as I mentioned earlier, the attackers went into the supply chain. They went to the vendor of the county government, and actually, whether they actually hacked in or were able to get in through a phishing attack, nonetheless, they got the actual credentials, and the email actually came from that third-party vendor. So it was legit. How would you ever know that as the county official? Again, we could talk about some of the suggested remediation and things to think about when you get an email like that. In the second bullet, another small government entity got a spoofed email. So it looked like it came from a known contractor. Again, a change in payment. The city complied and lost $3 million. And again, not a good scenario, particularly the threshold for recovering money is typically about 36 hours. So there is a part of the FBI in Virginia known as the RAT team. It's the Recovery Asset Team. And the Recovery Asset Team has relationships with all the US banks. And generally speaking, if we get wind of a wire that was sent to a wrong party, a wrong bank, if you have cyber insurance, or if you don't have cyber insurance working as a Concierge cyber member, we get in touch with the FBI. And if we have 36-hour window, the FBI has an 85% success rate of getting those funds retrieved back, again, because of the relationships with the bank. The last scenario in November 2018, again, another phishing attack against a county office. And in this case, the attackers were able to get into the payroll. And the attackers then started issuing payroll checks, and the entity lost $20,000. So again, we're seeing threat actors not just taking data in ransomware attacks, but in many cases with business email compromise, it's about taking your money. So what are some of the things that you can do to help mitigate this type of threat? So really what we say is any sense of urgency with payment instructions, it's a red flag, particularly if there's any last minute instructions. If you see any change in payment or bank information, account changes, what we really recommend is you need to pick up the phone and call your vendor or your partner, your supply chain partner, pick up the phone and confirm, right? And really you want to have two people within your organization that have authority to make wire transfers, maybe above 50,000 or a certain dollar amount. And if you don't, as an organization, do business overseas with anyone, then I would really recommend telling your credit union or your bank not to wire any money at any circumstance. If the request is to be sent overseas, you can actually have the bank block that. So I know for myself, when I wire money to Europe and it's a first-time wire, the credit union will reach out to me just to confirm that the information is correct and the wire transfer is valid. So that's always a good thing. And again, you want to use the telephone numbers, not in any email, obviously, or any email signature. You want to really make sure that you're talking and communicating to the right people, because oftentimes it's remarkable, but if you do see an email with a phone number, I've actually seen threat attackers with call centers. And so if that victim picks up the phone and calls, it goes to a call center of the threat attacker, and they can fairly well speak and communicate in English and basically try to fool you. Again, make sure that you're not clicking on any links. Hopefully your entities are doing security awareness training. Again, it's not foolproof, but again, it's a good measure to help train employees. And we've seen business email compromises with organizations as few as 10 people. So again, it doesn't really matter for size. It doesn't matter about geographic location, things like that. And certainly if you see any suspicious activity, if you see something, say something, right? So again, we really encourage organizations just to be cautious when you see anything with a sense of urgency. So that's the overview. I wanted to keep it simple and short, 30 minutes. I know your time is very valuable, but we're seeing, again, an increased trend. I think what's particularly interesting with the threat of ransomware is we're going to continue to see things evolve. But I could foresee, and I've seen situations where 911 systems, police departments are getting cyber attacked and ransomware impacting and encrypting the communications. And so if you have a resident in your town, or if you have that has a medical emergency and can't reach 911, or if you have a commercial business whose building is on fire and can't reach 911, even if you have cyber insurance, every cyber insurance policy for the most part, will exclude any claim arising out of bodily injury and property damage. So I want to mention that, number one. Number two, almost all the cyber insurance policies have an affirmative exclusion for pollution. So let's say, for example, you're a water district or a sewer district, and you get a ransom demand stating, if you don't pay, we're going to release the sewage. Well, how does that respond? Well, if you have a pollution policy, that will pay for the cleanup, but you have to have the pollution event happen. And the pollution policy doesn't have a ransom payment element. You may have cyber insurance, which has the ransom payment, but it excludes pollution. So how does that work? You know, you're going to have the pollution event in order for this insurance to pay. So it's a quandary. So again, I want everyone to know that I foresee the cyber attackers starting to cause more damage with bodily injury, property damage, pollution events, And I'll give you a recent example. There was a hospital in the Southeast that was attacked by ransomware. The healthcare staff couldn't access their personal healthcare information of patients. And what happened is a woman went into labor, and unfortunately, the baby's umbilical cord was wrapped around the neck, and the baby had passed away and died. So now the family is suing the hospital, and through discovery, it's been shown text messages from healthcare personnel stating that if they'd had access to the electronic healthcare records, knowing of the potential for the umbilical cord being wrapped around, they would have done an emergency C-section to for that family and on that mom. So again, we're starting to see cyber attacks, not just for data, not just for money, but we're starting to see it, what I refer to as kill chain malware. So are there any questions? And we're looking at the question and answers. And Haley, with that, I think, I'd like to kind of pass it off back to you, and maybe perhaps you have some questions, or if anyone else does, they can use the chat function.
I would encourage each of our participants to think about some questions. We can always follow up with questions afterwards if you don't have any that you want to answer right now. And I would also encourage you to reach out to our underwriting or loss control department if you have questions about your coverages, if you have questions about your cyber risk management program. I'm going to give it a few more minutes to see if anybody has any questions, but you definitely provided a lot to think about and a lot to consider for each of our members. Our next webinar is going to be December 1st at 1 p.m. And it's the real claims driver about auto liability. So if you have not signed up for that, I would encourage you to do that. And then workers' compensation return to work programs on January 26th, also at 1 o'clock Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. But we will definitely keep it open. And if anybody has any questions, I have just received the question, will the recording be available to attendees? Yes, we have recorded the session, and we will put it up on the YouTube channel. After the session ends, we will send out, and we get it uploaded to the YouTube channel, we will send out the link so you'll be able to do that. We put all of the webinars on an unlisted YouTube channel, so it's not just out there for everybody, but we will send each of the attendees, and then you can share those with anyone within your organization that would benefit from seeing it.
Yeah, and Haley, I'd just like to add, so if you're interested in the Concierge Cyber membership, we're 3 years in, and actually it's a small world, but when I used to work at ACE here in Atlanta, I used to be the underwriter for your pool, and back when it was TML. So I had a great working relationship with public entity partners, and I'm excited about the opportunity to reconnect with everyone. Again, we encourage members to have cyber insurance, but the market is changing. Your deductible retentions potentially are increasing. Underwriters are struggling with how to handle ransomware. And so really, I thought, well, there's an opportunity to help companies and organizations with like a roadside assistance model, like a AAA model that, basically it's a $250 a year membership. You gain access. If you don't have cyber insurance, you'll save because we have a panel of vendors, just like the cyber insurers provide, whether you have cyber insurance or not. But if you have more questions regarding what we're doing, certainly contact public entity partners, and we'll be happy to talk further about that.
So we'll keep it open for a little while longer, but feel free if you don't have any questions to drop off. But I encourage you to ask any questions you might have, because Kurt also obviously has a lot of information to share.
Yeah, I think, and so, if you have a ransomware attack, and I'll just kind of give a little color, we see so many attacks. We had one with a larger manufacturer last week. The process basically is, when you have a data breach law firm, the law firm will act as the coach. The data breach law firm will be the first point of contact, generally speaking. That law firm will then reach out to you and then bring in a information security firm who will then provide you a statement of work, right? And if you have cyber insurance, you're going to get the benefit of the insurance company paying that invoice. But regardless, what happens is then that information security firm that's engaged by the law firm to maintain attorney-client privilege will then engage Coveware to then start the negotiation with a threat actor. And typically, again, our goal in the industry is to get your organization up running as quickly as possible. Tracy has a question, Haley. How do we find out if we have cyber insurance? That's something I'll pass to you.
So each of our liability members have the option for privacy and network liability, and then there's a cyber extension that's optional coverage. So Tracy, I will need to get you connected with our underwriting department to look at your specific policy. Our approach has always been to try to encourage our members to put quality risk management in place, which includes your cyber risk management program. Honestly, with cyber, you can't just insure away all the risk, because if you have that denial of service attack or ransomware attack where you can't provide services to your citizens, that's a major issue. So let me get your contact information, Tracy, and I'll send you a message in the chat box, and I'll have somebody reach back out to you.
Haley, we have another question. Do you have a breakdown of the most common attack vectors, email, drive-bys, etc.? Drive-bys are possible, but really the attack threat vector is going to be not just your email, but it's going to be your internet connectivity presence, right? So whether you think of it as you have multiple windows and doors in your house, the threat actor is going to, basically look at what vulnerabilities that your organization has. And it could be very well your supply chain, right? So think about, for example, Target. When Target, the retailer, got hit, they were attacked through a HVAC contractor, heating, ventilation, air control contractor that had access to the network. So you think about even, commercial and private businesses that have online banking. Instead of the threat attacker hitting the bank directly, they're going to hit the bank commercial client because it's easier. So they're going to look and do a reconnaissance. Now, one thing I should point out to Haley and to everyone is the U.S. government has a program called C Cubed and CyHi, CYHY. And CyHi, basically, and I'm happy to give more information, but we as taxpayers pay. You can, as a public entity, so the federal government and Homeland Security said, if you're one of 16 critical infrastructure sectors in the United States, and government being one of them, you can receive free, and I say free, services, and the services include free vulnerability testing. So if you don't have a budget, U.S. Homeland Security can do a free vulnerability assessment, looking at what ports, what parts of your network might be exploited to get access into. They'll also do free scans of your website. So, and looking at website vulnerabilities, that could be cross-scripting or different things. I know a lot of municipalities, you can pay by traffic fine tickets. You can notify police if you're going to be on vacation for email. So they'll look at any type of vulnerability through your website. And then lastly, they'll also do phishing. The U.S. government actually has a program for free phishing for you. So again, I want to, as cyber special ops, we want to provide the best resources to our members, and it may not be necessarily, paid service. It could be free services, but we want to make sure those services are vetted, and we want to introduce only the best to our members. So again, if you want information on Homeland Security, let Haley know. We're happy to make introductions. Again, the takeaway: free vulnerability testing, free website vulnerability testing, and then phishing. And it's really, really terrific. And unfortunately, just many people just don't know about those free services.
Any more questions? Very good so far. I think that's great to ask additional questions. Well, with that, I think we can go ahead and close it out. I think we've got all the questions answered. Please feel free to send additional questions after the session's over, and we will work to get you connected to the right people or additional information sent out. Kurt, will we be able to send out your PowerPoint to all the participants?
Yes, absolutely. Happy to share that, Haley.
So we will send that out here shortly. And thank you for your time. Please sign up for the Real Claims Driver on December 1st or Workers' Compensation Return to Work programs on January 26th. And we appreciate your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.